Now, there's a concept in Hollywood called the camera lie. It works like this. In any film, the camera shows you a version of reality that's been chosen for you. The director decides whose face you see, whose reaction matters, whose story gets told. And after 2 hours of that, you walk out of the theater completely convinced that the person the camera followed was the most important person in the story, even if they weren't. Now, think about a standard NFL broadcast. Before the snap, the camera is already locked on the quarterback. He's reading the defense, signaling the play, surveying the field. You're watching him before a single thing has happened. The play runs, it ends, and no matter what occurs, a touchdown, a sack, an incompletion, the camera finds his face within seconds. His expression tells you how to feel about what just happened. Meanwhile, a cornerback on the other side of the field just executed a coverage technique that took him the better part of a decade to master. A safety communicated a pre-snap adjustment that unraveled the entire play before it even started. A defensive lineman absorbed a double team for 4 full seconds, which in football time is an eternity, just to free up space for someone else to make a play. But they only get 3 seconds of replay, maybe a quick analyst mention. Then, back to the offensive huddle. Here's the thing about the camera lie. You don't notice it's happening. You just slowly, quietly start to believe that the person the camera follows is the center of the story. And there's an elite NFL player you've probably watched for years, but still don't know his name. Not because it doesn't matter, but because of where he lines up. And the NFL has known this for decades. Let me ask you something. When you picture the face of the NFL, like the actual face, the guy in the commercials, the guy in the magazine covers, the guy kids are asking for jerseys of, who do you see? Almost every time, it's a quarterback. And before you say, well, yeah, quarterbacks are the most important position, that's true, but that's not actually why this is happening. The quarterback thing runs a lot deeper than just importance, and by the end of this video, your mind will be blown at just how different the system is than you think. But first, let's start with something that should seem obvious, but isn't. The MVP award has been given to a defensive player twice in the last 40 years. Now, part of that is just the nature of the game. Quarterbacks touch the ball on every single play, so of course their impact is easier to trace. But the deeper reason is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Defensive excellence doesn't leave fingerprints. A quarterback throws a touchdown pass, and there's a number for that. There's a number for yards, for completion percentage, for passer rating, for fourth quarter comebacks. You can make a graphic out of it. You can build an argument around it in 30 seconds. On the other hand, a dominant cornerback lines up against the other team's best receiver, and that receiver gets 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 anything. The quarterback looks his way once, doesn't like what he sees, and throws somewhere else for the entire game. What's the stat for that? There isn't one, or at least not one that shows up on the broadcast. What shows up on the broadcast is a box score with a cornerback who has 0 tackles, 0 passes defended, 0 interceptions. And to someone who doesn't know football deeply, that looks like a player who did nothing. It's like a surgeon who performs a flawless operation with 0 complications, and the hospital grades performance based on the number of complications reported. The better the surgeon, the emptier the chart. The emptier the chart, the harder it is to make the case that they're the best in the room. And here's where it gets interesting, because it's not just the broadcast doing this. The stats are doing it too. 2 separate systems, both built around offense, both making the same player invisible without even trying. So we've got the broadcast filtering for offense, and the stats filtering for offense. But there's a third layer to this, and it's the one that actually explains why the gap never closes. Marketing is not about greatness, it's about clarity. A message that a stranger can receive and feel something about in 15 seconds. And the story of a great quarterback is one of the cleanest stories in all of sports. He walks to the line of scrimmage. Everything depends on him. He reads the defense, makes the decision in less than 3 seconds, and it either works or it doesn't. The whole arc of a game, and sometimes a season, can be traced through one man's decisions. Win, and he's a hero. Lose, and it's his fault. The story has a clear protagonist, clear stakes, and a clear ending. Now try to tell that story about a defense. You can't. Really. At least, not in the same way. Because defense is collective. The reason a drive stalls isn't usually one player. It's the safety who held his own just long enough, and the linebacker who read the route correctly, and the corner who didn't bite on the double move, and the defensive coordinator who called the right coverage. 5 people made the right decision at the same time. That's actually more impressive than one guy making a throw, but it's almost impossible to package. It's like trying to sell a movie where the hero is the team. No face, no voice, no one for the audience to follow. You can do it, but it's hard, and Hollywood doesn't do hard when easy is available. So the NFL reaches for the easy version every single time. And every year, the spotlight stays on the same position. The gap between quarterback fame and everyone else's fame grows a little wider and a little harder to close. Which brings us to the real question. Is the NFL aware of this? Do they care? Here's what we think. The NFL isn't anti-defense. It's not like there are executives in a room deciding to suppress defensive players. The truth is more boring and more frustrating than that. The league is just following the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance has always run through the quarterback position. Offense sells tickets. Offense sells fantasy football. Offense sells the highlight packages that go viral on Sunday night. Offense creates the kind of moments. I'm talking about the fourth quarter drive, the game-winning throw, the comeback from 17 down, that casual fans tell their friends about on Monday morning. On the other hand, defense creates the kind of moments that only people who really watch football can truly appreciate. And the NFL is not a sport for people who really watch football. It's a product for everyone. The casual fan, the person who watches the Super Bowl, and the kid who's never seen a full game but wants the jersey. To reach all of those people, you need a story they can follow without a football background. And the defensive story almost always requires a football background. So the system keeps choosing offense, not out of malice, but out of clarity. And here's the line we keep coming back to. The NFL isn't marketing the best players in the sport. It's marketing the easiest stories. Those two things overlap a lot, but not always. And in the gap between them is where you'll find some of the most dominant players to ever play the game. Remembered mostly by highlights, celebrated mostly in circles of people who actually know football, and invisible to the general public that the league spent decades building. The best players in this sport and the most famous players in this sport are not always the same people. The league just never needed them to be. John Randle is one of the clearest examples of that gap you'll ever find. He went undrafted out of a Division II school in Texas. Teams thought he was too small. The Buccaneers didn't even give him a shot. The Vikings almost didn't either. They told him to come in over 250 pounds. So he hit a chain under his sweats at the weigh-in just to get in the door. And that was enough. He went on to have 8 straight seasons with double-digit sacks, finished with 137.5 career sacks, which is the most ever by a defensive tackle. Brett Favre faced him twice a year for years, and still said he was the toughest defensive player he ever faced. But you probably don't know his name. At least, not the way you know Favre's, or Troy Aikman's, or John Elway's. Even though he was out there terrorizing those same quarterbacks while they were becoming the face of the sport. Because the camera wasn't on him, the marketing wasn't built for him. And the story of a guy taking on double teams, collapsing the pocket, and wrecking game plans from the inside doesn't really fit into 15 seconds. This is his story, and also the story of every dominant defensive players the NFL never really figured out how to sell. That said, there's a version of this story that's darker. Some of these invisible players don't just go unnoticed, they're exploited. Hit that subscribe button and click the link off to the left to find out about the invisible players that build NFL stars into who they are, but get chewed up and spit out in the process.